Hi there, curious educators. Good to have you back for more Embodied Educator Summit series. How to break through curriculum stress, master the art of attunement, and steward true change your learners yearn for. I'm your host, Liz Wientjes, and you could say my guest today is a radical revolutionist, although she would say that mainstream education is more radical. When talking about embodiment, learning and teaching, it's time to look at a wider spectrum of schooling and learning through homeschooling, unschooling, nature schooling, and everything in between. So I love to introduce you to this truly authentic educator, expert, and tiger mother who raised 3 sons without schooling, Naomi Aldort. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Liz.
You're
Glad
very
to
welcome.
be here.
Good. I'm so happy to get to talk to you and all your work. So let me introduce you a little bit more to the audience. So Naomi Aldort is author of Raising Our Children, Raising Ourselves, published in 20 languages. And there's another book on the way, which is From the Age of Birth Till 5, another year or so, right?
Yeah.
No. So she's been also a long-time speaker in educational conferences in the USA, Canada, Australia, and Europe. She provides workshops in alternative schools and conferences about what optimizes children and students' learning, aptitude, and results. Through coaching and family intensive retreats, she guides parents as well as teachers, not about gentle ways to control the child, but about how to have peace without having to control. Her guidance to teachers is about maximizing the child's autonomy and enabling her or his innate interests and passions in the child's own way, in nature, in direct reality, and away from budgets and blackboards. In guiding families, Naomi works holistically towards a peaceful and powerful parent-child and partners relationships, leading to self-assured, caring, and resilient children who are empowered to be the authors of their own unfolding lives. Her Solve communication formula has been praised as providing the best of the work of Byron Katie and nonviolent communication combined. Also curious about that, by the way. No subject too small and no issue is ever trivial. Naomi responds to all issues from babies to adults, including teenagers, extended family, anxiety, depression, self-directed learning, and guidance about pregnancy, birth, homeschooling, work division at home, etc. The core of Naomi Aldort's teaching is a return to love and respect by trusting oneself and respecting children's inner guidance so they can stay rooted in themselves as they pursue their own path. And a tiny fact that I loved hearing from her that she swims all year round in the sea around Orca Island. Welcome, Naomi.
It's Orcas Island.
Orcas.
It's a Spanish name. It's not
Ah,
a whale.
of course. Orcas Island.
Yeah, the first
Yeah,
settlers here or something. Anyway,
nice. Thank you for putting that up. Yeah.
well, I thought I would clarify it right away.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I wanted to start because I do that. I try to do that with all the guests if I can, stay on structure a little bit. And that is with embodiment because it is a big term and it's a lot. And there's also so many ways in, I've noticed with all the guests. So for that audience, I would love them to get to know you and how you define what means embodiment for you, maybe on a personal and professional level, as we've noticed that, is a journey.
Well, I swim in the cold ocean year round, like you said. In,
Yeah.
in the winter, when the lake goes down to, there's ice on the edges, I
Yeah.
get in the water for about 5 minutes. The ocean is in the low 40s, and I
Yeah.
get in for about 10 minutes.
Mm.
But embodiment for me means you live life with your body.
Mm.
What we got is bodies. That's what life is about. We
Mhm.
weren't born into, if evolution meant for us to sit and live virtually, then we would have only a piece of brain or something,
Chip.
you know, with an
Blop,
ability
blop, blop, blop.
to exactly.
Sorry.
So that's what life is about, is the experience of the body. Doesn't mean that it doesn't include spiritual stuff, but it's still the body that experiences it. You know, when I sit in a concert and
Yeah.
hear a piece of Mozart, I'm moved and my body responds,
Yeah.
even if I'm just sitting and not active. But children and how they grow is all body.
Mm.
And we see that as they're born. They're busy with nothing but body. You know, they're
Mm.
hungry, they're wet, they're tired, and they want to be able to move like us because the
Mm.
movement is what drives them, right? So
Yeah.
then they crawl, my kids used to go on the belly at 5 months. We called them slugs. They all did that for some reason, all three. We had at 5 month old slugs going all over the house. And then
Lovely image.
crawl and then walk, right?
Yeah.
And even after they walk, that's not the end of their accomplishment. And that's what excites them. And that's how they learn things. They learn balance, they learn through feeling their own body, their own emotions, through physical existence on earth. You know, I taught my children to go barefoot, and we live in wilderness. We
Hmm.
have wild forest here. My oldest son, he loved my barefoot concept so much, he didn't want to put shoes at all. He told me one day that shoes are crutches. And I thought, you know, he's right.
It is.
He said nature made
Yeah.
us have feet that are built to run on the earth in wilderness. And by
Hmm.
the way, when he was a little older, like teenager, preteen, he used to compete running against his friends in the forest. And the forest here, the ground is wild. Nothing is flat. It's rocky, full of holes and sticks and thorns and you name it, unpredictable everything and puddles and and he would run barefoot and always win every competition. Just
Even though
like,
the others were wearing shoes.
yes, and couldn't keep up with him. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
And,
train it.
and
If you train it, yeah.
yeah, and he wasn't training for running. That was just,
No.
he just lived, he climbed trees. He was, my kids got up in the morning and saw the outdoors. They grew up in this house. And it's view on one side with mountains and water and forest on the three other sides. And it's wild. It's not tamed. My yard isn't tamed. I mean, we seeded it with some grass, which we mow about once a year.
Wow.
Then we mow it once when it gets really high, grow flowers, and the flowers kind of die, then we mow it. Then it slows down and maybe one more time a little bit the places that grow too tall. But anyway, they were all over it and climbing trees and riding their scooters and bikes and collecting slugs and picking up garter snakes and feeding the deer. And, it's like my oldest son was more into nature than his brothers, who
Yeah.
were musicians, but even they were outside a lot and experienced life with their body. And when they were inside, if they were playing music or doing things, they were free to conduct it, to sit on the floor their own way, to squat, to dance, to music, to improvise movement. It's
Yeah.
just, I can't imagine my children sitting in a classroom as children, as
Yeah.
children. It just isn't fitting for how children learn.
Yeah,
Because
because I'm interested in how did you get to the concept of homeschooling and maybe that's even me asking that question makes me uh, realize how much I am actually used to the concept of school and classrooms. So pardon me for yeah asking that. So I'm curious, how did it come
for
along?
me, it was the other way around. F- First of all, I didn't like school as a child. I felt like a prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
I was honest with myself about that.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait for each year to end and for high school to end for good. So I knew that that was not the part of childhood that I cherished,
Hmm.
going to school. There were a few teachers I liked or some things I enjoyed, especially that were not a classroom sitting
Yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah.
maybe activities on stage because I was always on stage. I sang and acted and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But um, that was part of it. The other part is, as a mother, honestly, I felt horrible the idea to take a 5 years old and send them to be with people I don't even know. It's like and dictatorial setup. Somebody, I raised my children not bossing them around, not telling them what to do, but modeling and treating them in a respectful way, which made them behave extremely well. In fact, every time we went to a public place, even concerts at age 2, classical, and restaurants, it became a joke that every single time somebody comes over and say, "What do you do that they behave so well?" And my answer was always nothing because I didn't do anything. I respected them. If we went to a restaurant, I made sure that first they have time to play outdoors, that they're hungry, that it's restaurant of their choice, that they love the food they want to eat, that it has a playground while waiting for the food, and that they didn't sit for 2 hours in the car before going,
It
always.
sounds like you put quite some effort into that in the process of adjusting instead of thinking, I want to go here, my kid needs to come, it comes straight out of school in the car, hasn't been playing, and you sit down and you eat your plate or you empty it.
Yeah, so I never had that concept. It's not that I transformed, it's that the child gets to be 4 and 5 and say, "What? I'll leave them with this stranger somewhere?" It just didn't fit for me.
Yeah.
And the concept of the someone telling them what to do. So I'll
Mm.
tell you a couple of stories because my oldest, he wanted to learn stuff. So at age 6, for example, there was in the recreation department of the town we lived in at the time, there were classes. There was a science teacher who was like homeschooling, my philosophy. He would just put experiments all over the grass
Yeah.
and activities, and the kids could do whatever they want, and he would help them if they needed help.
Hmm.
My son loves that class. And then he wanted, and I asked him what he wanted. He wanted to sign up for the music class, which sounded like improvisation and games, so I thought he would enjoy, and the art class, where they would be painting. So when I came to pick him up from music class, he was sitting on the couch, and the rest of the kids were in circle doing some circle music game. I didn't think anything of it. But then this was the second class. The first class he enjoyed and he stayed in the circle. So the second class, I pick him up, and this other child comes to me and says, my son had long hair, so he thought it was a girl. So this boy says to me, "Your girl misbehaved. That's why she's sitting on the couch." So I got to the car,
Yeah.
and of course he was telling me what actually happened. And he said, she was just doing the same games in circle, and I was bored of it. And he's used to being respected, so he didn't think anything of it. He just said, "I don't want to play, so I'm going to sit here." Didn't disturb, didn't do anything wrong, right?
Didn't get mad or
No,
respond.
no.
No.
He insisted that he comes in the circle, and he just insisted on respecting himself and said, "No, I'll sit here. I'm not disturbing. I'm sitting here." So she forced him. She put him in her lap and held him against his will.
Wow.
He kicked his way out and sat on the couch. So the boy who reported to me reported that he hurt the teacher. He kicked the teacher. He didn't kick the teacher, he kicked his way out
Yeah.
because he respects himself and he doesn't obey orders that don't fit with him because he was confident
Yeah.
and leading his own life and rooted in himself. Well, then he went to the art class, And I think he only did one because this happened in the first one. I come to pick him up. I look into the room of the class. I don't see my son.
Not
I
even a couch.
I went not on the couch, nowhere. I asked the teacher, "Where is my son?" She says, "He misbehaved. He's up with the secretary." So she punished him. So I go, and before I get up, I already see his little feet walking side by side with the secretary down the steps. Like Winnie the Pooh is the bear, Bum, bum, bum. And I hear the secretary saying to him, "Well, we'll see what your mother says." Like, he's a bad boy. Anyway, he runs toward me happily. We go into the car. We go, and he said, "Mom, I don't need the art classes. I can paint at home without being interrupted by a teacher." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I was painting and I was having a great time. Apparently, the teacher didn't think the kids last more than 20 minutes. It was a 2 hours class. So she didn't think they can focus. That's what she told me later, for long. So every 20 minutes, different activity. So after the first 20 minutes, he's absorbed in painting. And she says to him, "Now
Ah,
put your paints aside. I'm going to tell you a story about a bear." And he said, "I don't want to stop painting. I'm really into it now." Same story. He refused. He
yeah.
told him, "Go upstairs." And he never felt punished. He said, "I had a great time with the secretary. She's very nice."
That is beautiful.
He doesn't have a concept of punishment. So he just, okay. And then he
It's
stayed with
just a
the,
boundary, and then oh, okay, then I do what I want without
yeah. And
hurting
then he
anyone. That's
said, yeah.
interesting.
So those two classes he didn't continue. He said,
Mhm,
"I don't need that."
mhm,
And the science class, he kept going and he loved it. So I have lots of this type of stories. But when you respect children,
yeah.
they stay extremely able to be focused
Mhm.
because they focus on what they're passionate about. They do their own thing. And parents always ask, "Well, but they have to learn this and this and this." No, they don't. That's the thing. When they need to learn something for a purpose of their own, they become passionate about it. When my kids wanted to be accepted in a university, within one of them in 2 months, one of them in 3 weeks, studied to be accepted in university, the whole shebang of 12 years of school. And when I asked the one who did it in 3 weeks and was a 97 percentile on his results on the SAT or whatever it was,
BDT,
um, in
SCT, yeah.
comparison to high school graduates, I said to him, "How can it be? They spent 12 years and you just learn it." And he said, "I'm not a genius in that. They must be wasting their time in the school." And they do, because teaching children of the same age in a classroom situation is the worst condition to absorb any knowledge. And teaching them what they don't want to learn at that moment and without the embodiment, without their bodies being
Hmm.
engaged. And, in the younger ages, schools are learning now to get the kids also more physically, you
Exactly. Yeah.
counting with their bodies, experience
Yeah.
physics and stuff like that. So it's a little better in the younger ages, but once they hit middle school or fourth, fifth grade, again, it becomes too rigid and sitting and learning what they don't want to learn. And then
Mm.
they tell me, "Oh, the child is hyperactive. They're not focused." I said, "Well, send them home and let them do what they want, and we'll see if they're not focused." Because I see children, as a homeschooling mom, I saw my children being focused for hours a day, for months on the same thing, getting
Is
up
that
in the
for
morning.
all homeschoolers? Is that the same? Is that what the method creates? Or is it also maybe different personalities, different interests?
di- Different parents mostly. The children,
Okay.
if they allow the same autonomy that I
Mhm.
allowed my children,
Yeah.
they would, an exposure to possibilities. The job is to expose, not
Mhm.
impose. So
Mhm.
I took my children to museums, I brought books, we went to the library, we went to theater, we saw Shakespeare, we saw dance, we saw concert, you know. It's
Mm-hmm.
like
Hmm.
they went to the farmers market, they saw farms, they saw animals, we traveled. I
Yeah.
mean, we exposed them. They knew what's available.
Hmm.
And then when they glued to something at home, outside, needing to go somewhere, needing to act, needing teachers, whatever they needed, they went for it with gusto because they owned it. It
Yeah.
was their thing.
Yeah.
When they tell me a child doesn't focus in school, say, yeah, must be bored, must be not the subject they want to focus on.
Yeah.
And I ask the parent, like, what do they do at home for hours on vacation or spring break or
Yeah.
summer?
Yeah.
One father told me, my daughter, she just rides the bike all day long. I said, you see, she focuses.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and it turned
And
out
also
that
in a
this girl,
rhythm. Yeah.
well, she actually learned relativity, as it turned out, because she was riding her bike around close to the house
Yeah. Yeah.
perfectly and looking at how she sees the wall moving the other way. So eventually she
She
was
goes
talking
faster,
about,
slower.
yeah, and he said, "Oh my God, you're right." She was just telling me about all this relativity of speed based on her bike experience. Also, she used to turn her bike upside down and learn how it works, the physics of it,
Yeah.
and turn the pedals and look and look and look.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my sons used to do that on a tricycle already when he was like 3 years old. He says, like, I remember one of our relatives saying, well, look what he's doing. He's, wasting his time. And my husband said, no, he's studying physics.
That's the thing, right? Sometimes we label what children do with with the context that's maybe not even the truth. Like wasting time says who, according to what?
Yeah.
What is then the norm? Yeah, that's
In
interesting.
fact, you see, what people always tell me is like, your trust is unbelievable. And I don't feel it unbelievable. I mean, when I trust a child, I notice the blueprint is in their head, not mine. I have no idea what they need to do. How
Hmm.
can I know? Yeah, I know safety. I know eventually they need to read, but they do. My children all invented the method of how to read, each one different method. They
Hmm.
learned in different years, at different time, and different methods. And the inventing a method to figure out how to read is more important than the fact that they read,
Yeah, yeah. That they
because
figure out the process of.
they invented it. Neither one of them learned the way they teach in school.
No,
They
no,
don't know phonics. They never heard the word phonics. They just figured out the way they figure out speaking, which is much more complicated than figuring out reading. Much more complicated. Can you imagine? You're being somewhere and you see the mouth moves and different sound that hardly have any differences in them, and you figure out that they're words and how to move your own tongue and,
yeah,
and teeth and mouth
and
create the
sound.
sounds and the meaning of them, and then the meaning of concepts, not just things. At the beginning, it's just thing and who and what we do and
Or
action.
mimicking even.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but eventually they understand concepts. It's like anybody that can figure language out around between age 2 and 4 can figure out anything. Just
Hmm. Hmm.
allow them and don't get in their way.
Yeah, because that's, I think, what you just said, right? Expose and not impose. And if we,
Right.
one of the big principles or foundations behind the more unschooling way is like, don't turn it into a teaching opportunity, you often say, and just let them decide the way, the topic, and then when they ask a question, you answer as simple as you can, and then
Yes.
just wait for the next question.
Right. And that's really important because our culture
Yeah.
always looks for opportunity to teach.
Yes.
And I call that a disease teacheria or teacheritis. One of my articles was about that, I think published in a magazine in Australia, about teacheria or teacheritis, the disease of wanting to teach. So
Yeah.
a child comes and asks a question, why is the butterfly on the flower? I answer the question only, and I don't burst into a lecture about biology and how butterflies behave and how the flowers being planted and then the
Yeah.
rain.
What makes you just answer and not,
I respect. The child is small, but they're a full human being.
yeah,
The brain is not yet fully developed, but it's
yeah.
a full human being. It's if you're religious, a God's creation. I'm not religious. A world in creation. Okay, it's a program, and how dare I? How would I dare with such a magical unfolding of a human being to interfere and to give more than I was asked for? And
Mhm.
the other thing is, if you give more, they're not going to ask you after a while. Because then, oh, if I ask mommy about this, she'll give me this whole lesson. Never mind, I'll ask my friend in a week from now, or I'd rather not know than get myself into mommy going and bringing a book and giving me a whole lecture and
Yeah,
let's go
yeah.
to the library or today go online or whatever.
So as an educator or parent, we need to hold our excitement then to teach and just really turn it to ourselves to
Yeah,
not fall for that. Because I actually also
it
love
gets in the
explaining
way.
concepts. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what children learn. Then they learn to manipulate others and
How is
to
that manipulation? Can you explain that?
because it's not what the child asked for. It's extremely disrespectful. They asked one question,
Yeah, yeah. And
right?
if you would do
They
it
will
then with
ask
more
another
questions.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, if he wants to know more, he'll ask a follow-up question. You can say, would you like to know how?
exactly.
Da, da, da. I didn't even do that because that's already, barging on manipulation. But you call it excitement. I call it a need to control, a need to
Yeah.
manipulate. I'm not as positive about this
No.
excitement.
Yeah.
It, it's ego based. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah, it
make,
comes from my love for sharing. Yeah. Yeah, true.
yes, but
If the
that's,
kid doesn't ask.
yeah, it's about you
Mm,
wanting something that you
mm,
enjoy doing,
mm-hmm.
that you think will be good for the child, but it's you thinking it. So respect is respect, and the only schools that do this respectfully are the democratic schools,
Mm-hmm.
which I highly recommend. They're really awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we also have them in the Netherlands. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and I tend to then want to ask like a personal question out of curiosity, like how does your day look like when you do homeschooling? And does it like especially when you have three kids and do they teach you learn, explore with each other? How
Yeah.
does it involve you? Do you do your own thing and then they see you folding the laundry and they join or whatever, they fuck it up and you need to do it again? I don't know. How does your day go?
I did not plan it in advance.
No.
Eventually, when they get older, if they're going to some activities, my oldest one acted in theater, so where there were rehearsals, then he took karate classes, so he had to go to the karate classes. The younger two watched it, eventually they joined it too. So unless there are activities, and then my younger ones eventually took music lessons, so had to drive off island. We live on an island to go to
Mm.
teachers because the teachers on the island, my kids could have taught them after just a few months of life. Not, I'm just making it clear that they weren't fit for the level of prodigy that they were.
Mhm.
But anyway, so those things define some of the day. But in principle, what they tell me now, the kids, I remember one of
Yeah.
my children said to me as a young adult, my memory of childhood is you get up in the morning from the family bed, and the living room is full of light. And we have the stuff we were in the middle of last night when we went to sleep that we can't wait to get back to, right? Either outside or inside, whatever, it depends on the weather and the activities, etc.
Mhm.
And he said, the only thing that's bad about it is that being adults is not as fun. that what we learned, they all went to college and were on the dean's list and honor students. And they said the other students don't want to work as hard. We go home and we do more than the homework. We share what we learned with you, mom, and with dad, and we go and explore even more
Yeah.
because we're truly interested. And they were surprised that other students would just try to do as little as possible to pass the tests or to get good grades.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't really into it. My kids loved university. It was like
Yeah.
fun for them and fun the learning. In fact, when I visited my youngest one in Philadelphia, where he went to Curtis Institute and took academics in UPenn, he wanted me to come to his class because he wanted to share with me what a wonderful history professor he had. That I would see one of the classes about which he shared with me so much
That is sweet.
directly.
Yeah. Are they happy with how do they look back on the way they were brought up? Is there
It's
difference?
interesting. Generally, yeah, they're happy. Well, they're all
I mean,
successful. One of them owns his own business. The other is freelance musician, so very free, doing, working at
mhm.
night, performing in lots of places. And the third one is second chair, often first, associate principal cellist of the Boston Symphony Orchestra and does chamber music and some solos and uh, master classes here and there, depending on what's needed. Um, so, yeah, I mean, they got there. Their opinion on homeschooling is mixed. One of them is totally with it. Only one of them would do the same. And his daughter is also homeschooled. She's 9 years old now. Um, The other one, it depends who you marry. So the oldest one is married with a woman who would like the children to go to school. They're not at that age yet, but so we'll
Mm.
see.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
he's not, he thought he had, the homeschooling for him was he studied a lot. He loved studying. And he would be seen actually sitting and reading encyclopedias and knowledge books from a young age, was very into it, although he was very active physically. He was the barefoot. They called him on the island Barefoot Wonder. He went to town barefoot too.
Wow. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just,
That's
he
a
didn't want
gorgeous
to be
name.
a barefoot wonder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and the youngest one, I think he had mixed feelings theoretically.
Mm.
I mean, he benefited from it. He knows he could practice and advance as musician a lot better without having to go to school. Uh, but he idealizes school a little bit and thinks that he would be just like he was in college, the teacher's pet, and that would have been really great. And I tell him, yeah, and you would have been bullied because he was small and shy, and he would have been the teacher's pet, and that would not have been a good news.
Well, you
And I,
can't really know, right? I mean, if you don't
I
know for what happened.
yeah, I don't think it would have been good for him. But he doesn't have children. He's still single, and I don't think I understand that he has sometimes doubts about whether that's the best what to do.
Mm, mm, mhm,
I
mm.
think if he had his own children, then he may change his mind or not. And
Yeah. Oh,
part of homeschooling or unschooling, as I didn't sit and teach them, is that each child is different. You
yeah.
don't have stock children, so stock human beings. They're very different from each other. Their thinking is free. They're free to decide that actually schooling is better. That's,
Yeah.
you know,
Although I would think that a lot of educators would totally agree with you that even in the classroom, each child is unique and has their own.
yes, and their hands are tied. They often tell me that in workshops for teachers that I do,
Exactly.
or if teachers come to parenting workshops.
Yeah.
Most of my workshops are for parents and for homeschooling parents, but often there's also every now and then for teachers, or teachers come to the workshop
Yeah.
and ask questions because teachers want to expand the walls,
Yeah.
and like John Taylor Gatto, who wrote the book um, Weapons of Mass Instruction. It's a very fat book. He was a winner 3 times, New York City and New York State Teacher of the Year. He taught for 27 years and then he quit. He said, I expanded the walls of the classroom as much as I could. He sent the kids to the street once a week to apprentice and
Yeah.
explore life. And
Yeah.
he did in the classroom as little as control teaching as he could and still be able to be a school teacher.
Mm.
And he also wrote the book Dumbing Us Down, which is 7 lessons of what they do learn in school, which is
Hmm.
bad lessons.
What is bad lessons?
The bad lessons that you do learn in school, he itemizes in
Like,
dumb.
what should you forget as soon as you get your paper or you go out?
Yes, and don't focus for very long on anything. The bells are ringing, interrupt yourself.
Yeah.
A short duration, compete with others, wish for the others to fail so that you can impress the teacher. Go for the grades, not for what you're passionate about, and other things like that. He points out that the real learning happens, again, embodiment. It happens in the emotional and physical capacity of being,
Yeah, in the
not in
experience.
knowledge.
No.
Not, you can learn all the math you want, but what you're learning is how the teacher is treating you, and that you're forced to do something you don't want to do if you don't want to do it, or I'm stupid, or I've been shamed by being spotted and told to stand up and answer a question I didn't know in front of the classroom. And now they become shaming other people in their life and having bad relationship with their spouse because they shamed them and exposed them in front of the guests. They learn that in school. And other very bad social skills that
Yeah.
come from being in a classroom with the same age group. They can't help each other. The
Yeah.
democratic schools, there's no classroom, it's mixed ages
Yeah.
from 4
That's
to
interesting.
19. That's not interesting at all. That's the way nature is. That's the
It
way the
is. Yeah, 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 yeah.
that's the way the extended family is. That's
Mm.
the way humans have grown on their life. And the older children practice parenting and the younger kids have older kids to help them and to
Yeah.
guide them and to model for them and to play with them in a
Yeah, it
way.
sounds like it takes a village to raise a child, and you do it together, and
Yes,
you have
yes,
each your own path, and you facilitate that as much as you can.
yeah. And when they're the same
Yeah.
age, not only they can't help each other, they actually fail in the same ways, so they get into struggle with each other and
Mm-hmm.
they learn to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So especially the young ones, if you send 5 years old with other 5 years olds, 10 of them, in no time without an adult, it'd be a disaster, right? 4 and 5 years old, or 3 years old, or even 6 years old. You
Ah,
know,
and when you pair them up with other ages, there's
there is
more,
care. There
the
is care.
capacity grows of
Yeah,
that.
and they learn social skills from socially skilled kids
Hmm.
and adults. So
Yeah.
in the very young age, like when parents ask me about social, I say you have a 2 years old,
Hmm.
get them to play with somebody 4 times their age,
Yeah.
an 8 years old. And then they learn social skill from a socially skillful or 6 years old minimum,
Yeah,
three
yeah, yeah.
times their
Yeah.
age. By the time they're 3, they can do 2 times their age or 3 times their age. By the time they're 4, 2 times their age is fine. 4, 5, 6, 2 times their age is really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
And
because
then
I
it's
think that social part is one of the worries I think about homeschooling, that there's as an assumption going around, like, do they socialize? How do they learn?
They socialize much better. They socialize with socially skillful people,
Yeah.
adults, older kids, mixed ages, relatives. So they don't socialize in the antisocial environment of a dictatorial setting with same age controlled by one adult through threats, punishment, exposure, shaming, and praise.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
also think there's a lot of love there happening, though. I think,
absolutely. The teachers love the kids.
yeah.
But that's not the kind of love the kids benefit from,
Mhm.
actually.
What do they
Because
benefit from?
well, let me just finish why it's bad. Because to get the love from the teacher, they have to impress them. to be a good student. And that's the problem with praise, grades, evaluations. So now the teacher is this, yeah, lovely person, love the children. But if I want to shine in the face of this teacher, then I want the other child to have the wrong answer. I want them to fail. And I want me to study something I hate, but just to impress the teacher. So I learned to do in life things I hate, which sometimes you have to do, but you do it because of a goal of yourself that's bigger. You want to be a dancer, and maybe you don't want to do all these toes exercises and flipping your foot back and forth 20,000 times to get it strong, but you want to be a dancer. When the motivation is to want to impress the teacher, that's not a healthy motivation.
Yeah.
Because that
Yeah.
means you're now going to be insecure and dependent on approval, external approval.
Yeah.
And seeking approval is the disease of the century.
Yeah.
We all have the epidemic of seeking
Mm.
approval. How we
Yeah.
dress, how
Yeah.
we behave, what we say with our relatives and
How many
everybody.
friends we have? Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
worry. Will they
Yeah.
like me? Should I say this? Nobody can be free or authentic when they're constantly worried
Mhm.
about approval,
Mhm.
about will I be approved?
Mhm.
Or will
Mhm.
I pass the test? Or will I pass the audition? I love telling the story about my youngest son in terms of winning competitions, because he won a lot of competitions. And I was worried about him because he was such an amazing cellist and actually pianist too, and played with orchestras already at age 10 as soloist, conducted an orchestra at age 14, I mean, or 13, I think. Anyway, so
From internal motivation, right? So he wanted that.
he wanted to do these things, and I was escorting him, and I told him, I don't care if you want to quit, you let me know you want to quit. I told both musical kids the same thing, and
Yeah.
the other one did quit and return and quit and return and change. But this one was really, very disciplined. And so he won Washington State, then he won the regional, and then he was sent to the national competitions of this in Toronto. So we had to fly to Toronto. And on the airplane, I wanted to make sure that he's not getting hooked on approval. And I said to him, because some of it was unavoidable with his choice, you have to go for competitions, etc. And he loved it. But so I said to him on the airplane, we were sitting there, and I said, you remember, you know that I don't care if you win or not. To my delight, he was impatient with me, and he said, yes, Mom, yes, I know, I know. And then I asked him in the hotel where we were staying, I was, after I saw the big hall that they're being auditioned in,
Mhm.
they play a half an hour or 45 minutes program in front of judges. It's not like America Got Talent. They don't interact with them and have fun.
No, it's probably like very,
Sit
yeah,
there
yeah, yeah,
with a
distant.
full house of people, and they go on stage with a pianist accompanying them that they rehearsed with once. And pretty tense, I couldn't do it. I know that. I couldn't do it. I play instrument, but I couldn't be under that pressure. So I said to him, when you walk on stage in front of those four judges and a big hall of audience, what's your attitude? And he said, Mom, I go on to win, and then whatever happens is fine with me. And it is, because there was a time that he got second place, not first, and his friend got first, and he was really fine. You know,
Hmm.
I saw that. I saw situations, and also as an
Oh,
adult later, different auditions and things. He didn't pass everything, and he was fine.
oh,
He was really
beautiful.
fine with it.
Hmm. That's
He did pass the important ones that made an impact on his life.
on
So
his career probably too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but but he was really fine with this thing. So I see my sons being, quite powerful and resilient in that way. Not
Mhm.
that they never had problems or had to work on themselves or were anxious or, they're normal human beings. And when you're so capable, there's more reasons to be anxious about. So
In
there's
this world, maybe that's fed even more easily. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not saying no one is perfect, and I
Mhm.
wasn't a perfect parent, but I think the homeschooling gave them the opportunities to really pursue themselves. And socially, they did have friends. I did want them to have more. We lived on an island, and the social was a little lacking. And
Because
from
it's
what
so
I
small.
wanted for them. Yeah, there was a homeschooling group and they had friends and activities. And later on, we had to move to temporarily to cities for the music, for the real teachers or real opportunities for the young ones. And they were in orchestra and had friends and chamber music and stuff. Um, it wasn't, I would say, socially, I wasn't completely pleased with how much they had with other kids, but they developed their social skills. They all went to colleges, to
Mm.
universities, and
Well, it
uh,
sounds like it's good that you had two in music and not one in football and one in music and then one in ice skating. So you had to be in three places at once because,
well, I still had to because different teachers, different instruments.
yeah, of course. But
So
yeah,
when,
yeah,
when
yeah.
I take him to ice skating or to my daughter, my granddaughter is doing ice skating. Whether I take one to ice skating and one to piano lesson makes no difference than one to violin and one to piano.
Yeah,
It's still
yeah, yeah.
taking them on each other route. So we would do the route on the same day, get off island and
Yeah, of
go to
course.
this
Yeah,
teacher and that
yeah,
class,
yeah,
orchestra. And
yeah,
that's why we had to also rent houses in different cities and just stay there for a while. And
yeah, yeah. So I'm wondering, there's this element in the world which is called media and technique and computers and lots of devices and distraction.
yeah,
So I'm thinking in the homeschooling setting, uh, how, yeah, I know you let them grow up without television. You did go to the movies with them, but these days you can't ignore. Well, I mean, life changed. What do you say about that? Well, how does it influence the learning environment? Because it does so much to our brains and our
yeah.
nervous systems
It's terrible. I
and our
definitely.
embodiment.
Yes, yes. Children learn through their bodies and direct experience. They have to touch, they have to put in their mouth when they're young, and they have to put in their hands and get in the mud and climb the trees and try it and feel the balance and and sitting in front of a computer, no matter how educational the program is, with the short distance to the eyes, with the dependency it creates, with the addiction it creates, with the time it takes away from connecting with other people and children directly. It's very detrimental. It would take hours to talk about it, so I won't. But I would recommend two books, one by Dr. Amen, Amen, and one by journalist Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. I don't remember the name of Amen's book, but Haidt's book is The Anxious Generation. Very thorough about how much harm it's doing and why our current Z generation is full of depression, anxiety, suicidal, all coming from that inability to generate their own lives, passivity, dependency, on top of the physiological aspects of radiation, ruining the eyes, ruining innovation and creativity. You can be creative on computers, but start it late enough so that it's not in the formative years that depend on embodiment. So, and I see from my clients, the parents who succeed the most are those who are absolute no gadgets at home until uh, quite an old age, and not giving the child their own gadget until 16, 17, or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Another great trick is when they need to do, let's say they go to school, they're not homeschooled, and they need to do something on the computer, have the computer generally turned off and not accessible, but in the living room where the family is, and have them do the homework when all the family, or at least the adults, are there. So they know what they're doing and everybody is there. They're not alone in another room searching for porn or for whatever, whatever. And even if we lock all these things, the kids are so smart, they find ways
That's the
sometimes.
thing, what I'm thinking, they will find it. They will be confronted in other ways. I mean,
Yes, yes,
yeah, that's so
it's
hard, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I've seen families who go in the middle way and they come to me with 13 years olds who are totally addicted.
Yeah.
Who say if the parent then want to take the computer away from them that they gave them, a laptop or a phone, and the child says, I'll commit suicide if you take it away from me. That much dependency.
Yeah.
And the child actually feels this way. Like,
It's a truth for them. If it feels like that,
yeah,
it's
it's instead
present.
of, yeah, because they're not existing here with body.
No.
That's why I love the subject of your interview. That's
Yeah.
where you and I are so on the same page here. It's like, oh my God, we're born here to be in bodies. That's the
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Evolution will take billions of years to turn us into a dot looking at a screen.
Yeah. A
I mean,
chip or
I don't
even,
think that's going to happen. I think we're going to just demise ourselves
yeah, will
in some way.
evaporate one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like I chose what the homeschooling based on my kids, not for my convenience. It's a lot more work. People say, actually, I'm not sure it is, because struggling with what happens in school and the homework is a lot of work too.
Yeah.
But I did it for them, for what's best for them,
Hmm.
not for
Hmm.
me. Not for me, not for my husband. It's like what's best for them. That was the leading.
Wow. Not even for self. Mm. Hmm.
Not at all.
No.
Not at
And
all.
were you able to work on those days? Is it like something, did you find a way to do that? Because then self-time to me sounds, well, of course you bring them away, but you're also the taxi driver. My mom was too, by the way. I have three brothers and I remember lots of driving to the horse rides and whatever.
Yes. I didn't work much. I was a piano teacher before I was a
Mm,
parenting educator. And with my first baby, I had my students come and he sat on my lap or he sat on the floor doing things, I
yeah,
used blocks or whatever. My kids were so good behaved because I respected them, they respected me. They could sit through me giving a session, even my third one later on, and just I tell them I need an hour, unless you need to go to the bathroom or some help, just sit and do your thing. And I would give them a bunch of toys, couple of slices of apples in case they're hungry, and I would be busy with them before, so they're not starving for mommy time, just like with the going to the restaurant.
yeah,
You'd
yeah.
and they would sit there. So I kept teaching piano with my first one. I tried to continue with my second one. It became too difficult. So I gradually phased off and the piano teaching, and for a while didn't work at all. By the time I was pregnant with my third, my articles were published internationally, and I was asked to
Mm,
public speak and etc. So by the time he was born, we were sometimes traveling the whole family so that I could speak.
yeah,
And people started calling and asking for advice, initially by phone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And,
And
and by the way, I think traveling is actually a beautiful experience, right? Also to bring into the learning space for,
absolutely, we traveled also for the sake of traveling
yeah,
from around, and we traveled again, doing whatever would be best for them, not
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So
They
yeah,
got roles or purposes or ways
yeah,
in their travel to
yeah.
decide on stuff.
We didn't go to a boring museum that the kids would be bored for 2 hours while daddy and mommy want to look at pictures. But we did go to science museum and places that would be fitting for the children. It's not that we didn't take care of ourselves and our children learned anew to respect us. I mean, I was able to say to my three kids, play quietly in your room for a while, I need a nap. And I would go for a nap and I get up and they're playing quietly in the room or, whatever. And
Mm.
I would say, thank you for, I feel much refreshed and be better for the evening for all of us
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
had a little nap. So
Wow.
they were actually always very considerate people, very and
Wow.
very aware of other people. And I teach a whole thing to parents, techniques to get children to be aware of others and to care about others.
That is beautiful because it sounds like that's so
Yeah.
present that you can trust
And
them.
that, yes, and that again, schools don't teach that. They teach the opposite. They teach dictatorial
Yeah, the
relations.
framework is already made like that. And sometimes I notice I didn't realize it as much until we also got to speak more about it, that it's like, yeah, it's the way we're structured in society so much. And then we think it's normal. But
Yes.
what is normal? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. We create the norm
yeah.
and we program the brains of the child to put up and to get used to and to build habits based on those norms. And then they need the same norms to be the same, and we don't succeed to change anything.
Yeah.
But I find that the kids that don't and that have the freedom to create their own norms have very easy time to fit in and blend with norms at an older ages because they don't have stress about it. They don't have a memory
And
of
they don't have
having,
the fear of standing out, not belonging, or
yeah, or the stress of having to sit in a class when they don't want to, or being shamed or graded badly or whatever. They don't have negative association with learning. Because one of the things that they learn in school is to learn what they don't enjoy.
yeah, lots of
And
stuff probably
for
they
its
don't.
own sake, for
Yeah.
pleasing someone else. And I find that kids who grow up free are very capable of doing what they don't like to do
Mm-hmm.
because they're the authors of their own purpose. So if the purpose is a clean house
Mm-hmm.
and they want a clean house as an adult, they clean.
Is that the blueprint? Because that's a word that stuck with me. Is that the blueprint you're talking about? That you
Yeah,
don't know, as only I know my blueprint and you know your blueprint?
that's right. Even hard to know oneself. It's a
Yeah.
lifelong learning.
Mm.
You figure it out yourself. But if you're constantly extracted out of yourself and being told to do what society expects or what the teachers expect of you, that you're really led astray away from learning. That's why there's so many movements for self-discovery and spiritual work, etc., because we were all losing our self,
Our
our
own rhythm, our
yeah.
timing, our
So my wording for it is when people ask me to summarize, the bottom line is make sure your child stays rooted in themselves. That why they do things, including things they don't like to do in order to get this job or in order to get this partner or in order to achieve, to build this or that or become a violinist or whatever it is, that comes from inside.
hmm.
Also, they can't be molested this way. I remember how happy I was one day when we had a friend visiting and he was playing with the kids outside, and all of a sudden we heard the 3 years old scream, bloody murder. I mean, like really scream. My husband went out and said, "What happened?" Because he saw nothing. He saw the other guys few feet away from the 3 years old and he wasn't screaming anymore. So he asked the friend what happened. He said, "I came by surprise and picked him up." So he screamed. And my husband said to him, "Would you like me to come and pick you up by surprise?" And the guy got it. He said, "Oh, I see."
Yeah.
So,
But
you know,
it is something we do, right? All the time. And grandmothers do it also to their grandchildren. Like, oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Ask, ask, do they want it? Like
ask.
I remember my middle child at age 7, we were going in town and I live in a small community, people know each other. And this guy comes to him and taps on his head. How are you? How, are you going to school? And my son looks at him like this, doesn't answer anything. So I said to him, first, don't touch without permission. Second, I don't think he wants to talk to you. So, adults interrogate little children.
Well, not just little children. Sorry.
Well, because they learned it as children, because their
Exactly.
parents, see,
Yeah.
the normal parent,
Yeah.
when this happened,
Yeah.
would speak to the child and tell him to adjust to the adult's need. So, like the normal parent would have told my son, it's a nice guy is asking you a question, answer. Do you want to tell him that you don't go to school and you homeschool? Do tell him? And that's just, they live in this patronizing world. And now their own mother or father is on the side of this other patronizing adult who touches them without permission and inquisition without permission, all these questions. It's like, yeah, if you want to ask questions, great. But if you want to answer. So I told him, and it doesn't look like he wants to talk to you. So he started asking me the questions about him, which is also impolite. So I told him, I'd love to answer your question, but I'll have to ask my son if it's all right to talk about him. Which my son said yes, but most adults would have said no, right? It's not, we don't want to stand there and have two people have a conversation
Talk
about.
over you. Oh, that is so embarrassing. Gosh, and it's happening quite a lot sometimes. Like, wow, it's really happening here. No, I'm not here.
All the time.
Yeah, yeah.
All the time. And then, praising children is manipulation, punishment is manipulation, grades and tests are manipulative. Uh, we think we need them to know what the child knows. No, we don't need to know what the child knows. The child needs to know what they know and to pursue what they're interested in. And the worry that they wouldn't know what they need to know is totally unfounded.
Yeah.
Every single unschooled democratic school graduate who never touched math until age 18, whatever, if they need it for whatever they need to pursue in a university or in a profession, they learn it. My oldest son never studied math. My middle one loved math and was a whiz at it already at 4. He would do things, unbelievable stuff. But my oldest one, no, and he's now a contractor. He owns his own company. He runs his own accounting. You know,
Yeah.
where did he learn it? You learn it in life, and you learn when you actually need it, when it's authentic and it's your autonomous decision. I need to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He went to college eventually, so
Yeah.
he passed the test. He said, Mom, I got the math book. So at age 19, he went to college. He waited for a while, and he needed to pass the test. He got the book, and he said to me, Mom, I looked in the middle of the book, and the book explains how to answer the question, the math questions. So I studied the explanation until the math, and it was correct. I said, did you go to the end of the book, to the most difficult? He said, yeah, of course. That's what I did next. And it was just as easy. You read the explanation, you do it, and you know, So he did the whole book. He passed the test. He went to university, was an excellent student on the dean's list, like the 3 of them. No problem. It's like when they want to learn it and when they authentically see the need for it, which is constantly in their face in life itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then their curiosity can lead the way. Yeah.
And they do what they want to do. There is no unfocused child. They're focused on playing the ball, on digging the hole, on collecting slugs, on counting the stop signs, on whatever. And
Yeah.
then later on
Having sand run through the hands on the beach, just
and
drawing
later on,
circles. Yeah.
the teenager are focused on learning life, learning relationship, talking to their friends, figuring out sexuality, you know, the biology of it. Children, you know, they get interested in everything, or they're into science or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But when it's their own, they would learn because they want to,
Yeah.
not imposed on them, and they don't have to impress anyone. And that's where praise is also a big problem. But that's a giant subject, and
Yeah.
we're out of time.
I
Bigly
think we
out of
also should put it to an end because we've been talking for quite a while. Yeah.
time.
It is becoming a long conversation and yeah, but it is
Yeah,
very rich and we touched upon a lot.
yeah.
I love the word blueprint. That is sticking with me so much. Go back to the roots and back to, trust that your child and your student, your learner, and that they can find their blueprint and maybe, just guide them in what they need
It's
to.
also safer because when they're rooted in themselves, like I gave the example of my 3 years old screaming when picked up without or
Mhm.
touched without permission,
Yeah.
uh, it's also safer in terms of peer pressure,
Yeah.
media pressure, sexual pressure, molestation. I mean, a kid who is rooted in themselves, and
Mm.
it starts from home. You know, I tell parents, if your child wants to sleep with you, let them sleep with you. No, they need to learn to sleep by themselves. No, they need to learn that how they feel about where to sleep is how they know where to sleep. So they're independent, self reliant. That's self reliance. So if they decide they need to sleep with you, sleeping with you is what teaches them independence and self-reliance and being rooted in themselves. So it's in everything. When to learn to read. Why age 6? Who said everybody is ready at age 6?
Yeah. And
Some
also
people,
it's bringing up this because codependent or co-regulation is a very big thing. So it doesn't stop during the night. Like, yeah, you put it in your own bed and then I have my regulation, you have yours. And I mean, it's a constant ongoing thing. So that actually says a lot for co-sleeping, I think it is called, right? To
are sleeping, yeah. And
yeah.
the child, you know, parents think they can't regulate themselves or their own sleep, but they can. From the day they're born, they are doing it and they're learning from embodiment, from their own experience with their own body. So putting the child to sleep against their will because I decide the child is tired actually prevents them from getting to the point that they recognize I want to sleep.
Mhm.
Even though they don't put words to it, they just fall asleep and they learn regulation. Next time it's like, oh, it's that feeling that I also had yesterday. Before, when I have this feeling, I want to lay on mom and or dad and close my eyes. And that registers in. But if we rock them and force them and, you know, just decide for them it's time to sleep now, they don't get to that point. And so the regulation isn't learned. They're learning again, like in school, that someone else controls them and teaches them, and
Yeah.
that without the teaching of somewhere else, they're not capable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not true. They're amazingly and magically
Yeah.
capable
Yeah.
of figuring it out and of blending in as needed as they grow older because they want to. They want to be part of society. You can't prevent them from doing that.
No, we are social human beings and we're wired for connection in that sense. That's part of us. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they will do it, and they
Yeah,
will do it,
yeah.
and they
It
will
also
learn.
makes me think of the work of, because you're throwing in books, and this makes me think of the work of Darcia Narvaez or Navaz. I never know her word. The Evolved Nest. Do you know?
No,
No? That's also an interesting one because that's also all about like how we, well, it takes a village to raise a child concept and how we're grown in society out of that and how to
right.
have some principles to bring that back. Yeah.
Yeah, well, today that to raise a village is very difficult because when
Yeah.
the village raise them, they become hooked on screens because well, that's
Oh,
what
and
the
so
village
much more. I think we're just leaning on so much structures in so many ways. I
very
think,
difficult
yeah,
today.
it is hard. Yeah.
Village. A lot of parents who are actually very successful don't let the village raise the child or create their own community and
Yeah.
village that's selective group of people who would do similar things because there's such diverse ways of
Yeah.
raising children
Yeah.
and communities that a lot of parents that call me, I give sessions on Zoom privately, people can sign up and talk to me. A lot of them complain about the influence of the village being a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's many different villages. Yeah.
Budgets and the
Yeah.
behavior and the
Yeah.
disrespect and the food,
Mm-hmm.
the food that they would feed them if they go, it's endless. Anyway, we said we should end, and
Yes, let's bring it to a close. We can do it, Naomi. We can do it. I'm almost also a little bit afraid of, do you want to say one more thing? Because I know it will turn into another. So
I think the concept of being rooted in oneself could be the close up,
cool.
uh, so that we can save time. It is really long.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much, Naomi Aldort. It was a pleasure to learn from you, to converse with you. And yeah, you opened a bit of my concepts where I'm like, yes, this is interesting. And I am sure there's more educators listening and thinking, oh, wow, what another world is there available. So I hope they find you and explore more if they're anyway drawn to this. And thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
good day. And I say, come back for more Embodied Educator Summit series to the audience. Bye bye for now.